and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday, and welcome back to Agent 29. It's great to finally be back in the studio. It feels like I've been gone for forever.
Whatever.
Oh, well.
I need a trash can to sit in.
Yeah, you do. Especially this morning.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the program, my friends.
It's good to be back.
Thanks. So you've been off at committee meetings. Well, it's appropriations, so we already know what you're talking about. But did you meet anybody else on Sesame Street?
Come back to me. I almost said something that probably wouldn't have been
appropriate?
No.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, we'll give you a couple minutes to think. Well, welcome back. Welcome to the show, my friends. Welcome back to another week on Cowboy State Politics. I've got a great show for you. I have an excellent interview, I think it's excellent, with Representative John Baer. He's finally announced that he's running for a fourth term in the Wyoming House, and so I had a chance to visit with him yesterday morning. We talked for about a half hour, and, I asked him, I thought, some pretty fair questions. And so, anyway, we'll do that about 8:30. Also, I mean, there's a couple of really interesting pieces. I think they're interesting. In one of them is in the Turkey Vulture, so we'll get to that. And one that I just happened to find, as I was actually leaving the house, coming down to the studio, is can the ATF be reformed?
Nope.
No, probably not. But, I mean, it's an interesting question. Maybe if they went back to their original purpose.
Interesting question, pretty short answer.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's become a really corrupt organization.
And I think you'd find the same thing with the Wyoming Business Council. Once an organization becomes entrenched in a particular way of thinking, really hard to... It's like, we keep going back to the football team analogy.
Oh, it's baseball.
Baseball's different, though.
Well, it's a far better sport. I mean, that's what the main
that
difference
I'll argue.
is. Well, the point is...
It may be a far better league.
So the point is, if you happen to be the Colorado Rockies, and you have had numerous seasons in a row where the only word that can be used to explain your performance is crappy or sucky or terrible or horrendous. Okay, so I guess there's a whole bunch of words we could use for the Colorado Rockies. The question is, where do you start? I mean, you got to have some sort of rebuilding, and the question is, do you replace the whole team, or do you start with the coaching staff?
Read nothing into the purple.
Yeah.
I would say a good example, and I hate to do this to you, but you walked right into my trap.
Okay.
A good example is the Denver Broncos. How many years were they bad?
No, they were terrible for several years.
And then they said, okay, we're going to go into a rebuilding stage. And by the end of that year, they were already winning games. And the next year, they were that far from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, back in the
Okay,
playoffs
what
and
changed?
the coaching staff.
Yep, you still had many of the same players.
Yep.
There were some changes. I'm sure there were changes in who's going to be captain or who people are listening to in the hierarchy there. But what he did is change the mentality, change the framework, change the entire culture.
Yes.
You can't change the entire culture when you have a bunch of people who are the same people that were there
Yeah, and they all
who are
think the
making
same,
too damn
and-
much money.
well, yeah, that's
Maybe if you went in and cut their pay to 25% of what they were doing and then put some
well,
standards.
Josh Durrell, you better go 75.
Well,
But
he just needs to go.
yeah, I mean, you have an excellent point, and it's when you have a crappy team and you're not winning. Generally speaking, poop rolls uphill, and so you get rid of the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And the important part here is that you don't just fire the head coach; you fire everybody else that's underneath him.
Yeah. Where the Rockies are concerned, I think that starts at the owners.
Yeah.
They have not, for whatever reason, all the different people that they've brought in there haven't felt like they were supported. And I'm saying this from the outside.
Sure.
They haven't felt like they were supported, like they were going to put in whatever it took to be a winner.
They certainly haven't done that.
When you look at the Broncos, it was very evident that this team that came in was willing to do whatever it took to produce a winner, and they were seriously looking at buying a controlling share of the Rockies as well. And I had my fingers crossed. I haven't seen that happen.
So
I might have missed it
You've been a Rockies fan for a long time, or?
since their inception.
Okay.
I was in exile in Denver when they came to be, so I remember the very beginning before when they were playing at the old Mile High, and then they built Coors Field. We went there a lot. I got to see all of the we've had some great players
Oh man,
come through Denver.
Galarraga
Yeah.
and Dante Bichette. I mean, there've been some great players. Nolan Arenado, and that's what did it for me with
Yeah.
the Colorado Rockies was
Yeah.
trading him away.
Well,
for one good player.
I think that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Is if you're going to build a team, you do have the argument that some people are just too expensive, so you have to go with younger ones. But at that point, I felt like Nolan was the heart of the team, and when they took the heart out of it, they took the heart out of it.
Oh yeah, I mean they went straight in the top.
And-
I mean they
yeah.
weren't good before, but
Yeah.
they traded him,
And
and
You kind of felt like watching them that anybody that was there thought, "What's the use?" As soon as anybody does any good, they're going to get traded off.
yeah.
So
Well, a different team, of course, my favorite team, the Texas Rangers. One thing that I've noticed, and this plays right into our analogy, is in baseball now, like the people who get the acclaim, the headlines, all the attention are your big home run hitters, right? I mean, they're the guys that bring the crowd and knocking balls out of the yard. But one thing the Rangers have done, and I've watched. I haven't watched as many games as I would have liked, but in several of the games that I've watched, there is a serious emphasis on bunting. Now, if you're not a baseball fan, what a bunt is you don't swing the bat, you just let the pitch hit the bat, and then it dribbles out in
Oh.
front of the plate.
that explains something. I thought it was that red, white, and blue stuff that hang on in front of a stage.
Well, that is the bunting too, but this is baseball bunting.
I'm so confused.
It's okay. Well, the idea is that it forces the infield to come in because they have to come get the ball and try to throw it to first base, and either it's really useful in advancing a runner to the next base or bringing a run home. And most teams don't do that because they focus on big, hitting
Swinging
home
for the
runs.
bleachers.
Yep, swinging for the bleachers, but the coaching staff in Dallas, I guess Arlington, I guess technically where the stadium's at. But I read an interview with the coaching staff, and they said, "Hey, we're focusing on the fundamentals of baseball. We're not really interested in hitting balls out of the park, though that's great. We're interested in winning games, however we can." And so, if you apply that same philosophy to government agencies like the Wyoming Business Council, the question is, are they interested in hitting balls out of the park, or are they just interested in winning games? And should they even be involved in the game at all? I mean,
Yeah, and the business council, by the types of businesses they're trying to recruit. Obviously, they want to hit the big home runs, make the big splash. And so those companies that they're looking for are the ones that least likely need help. And companies like BWXT give $100 million to a
Yes.
multi-million dollar company. It's a gesture.
Yeah. And, you know, and with any team, even the Colorado Rockies, okay, or, you know, and we're just picking on them because, you know, it's my favorite whipping post, easy target. Even they hit a ball out of the park every once in a while. You know, you've got 160 games a year. You're going to hit some home runs. And so if you compare that to the Business Council, Weatherby up here in Sheridan, okay, already a very successful company. Did get them to come to Wyoming. I can't remember how much money we gave them, but there were some incentives there. The question is, would these companies come to Wyoming, you know, without the Business Council or even in spite of the Business Council? And my argument would be, look at Cheyenne. Okay, Cheyenne's exploding with all sorts of different companies coming there. So the question is, do we even need them at all?
Yeah. So look at the ATF.
Yes.
And I'm going to use your baseball analogy because it's your show. You look at the ATF, and to compare it to a baseball team, they've just come out of their inning. And during that inning, they made base hit after base hit after base hit after base hit. Now, what do I mean by that? We just had Michigan and Rhode Island join about 10 other states in banning so-called assault weapons.
Yes.
Which also include semi-automatic pistols in some cases. They've made some great strides. So their last inning, when they were up to bat, they left. They finally got their 3 outs, and we got them out of there for a little while. And then when our team comes up to bat, we hit a couple out of the park right away. But eventually they know that we're going to get our 3rd out.
Yep.
They're going to be back up again. And they know that last time they were up, they made some good progress with base hit after base hit after base hit. They batted around and then some. And they're just biding their time, knowing eventually we're going to step on it, or we're going to get tired, or we're just going to say, you know, we've done enough for now, and relax. They'll come back. And that mentality permeates
all of government, really.
All of government. Even in the Wyoming legislature, that mentality is a lot thicker than you'd think.
Well, think about it. You know, we have a citizen legislature, or allegedly so. And so, you know, folks like Ken, who, you know, get elected for a couple of terms and have a plan of stopping being in politics and going fishing.
Hopefully at least 3 terms.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, but you're not, you know, you're not planning on being in there for 20
I'm not
years,
a lifer.
You know, like Harshman or the rest of them. But guess who will still be there even when you're gone? The bureaucrats.
Not Harshman.
And people like, well, Harshman, if we defeat
he
him,
may come back.
Well,
if he loses this one. Anyway.
I mean, he's like mold. I mean, if you don't get rid of him, he just always comes back. And I came across this video, and I meant to play this a little bit earlier, but we got to talking. Have you ever wondered what the world would be like without Republicans? If there were no Republicans, what would the world be like? Here's a guess. Oh, maybe I turned the volume down.
When you do communism right, it works perfectly and everyone loves it.
And it only took 200 million.
All right, I'll rewind it all the way.
Yeah, turn your volume up on your...
It adds up. When you do communism right, it works perfectly and everyone loves it.
And it only took 200 million starving to get here.
That's less than half as many as we thought.
There has been another terrorist attack with 33 dead. The American government has decided not to do anything about it since we probably deserved it.
It sure is great that abortion is now free and available for everyone everywhere.
Yeah, but it's too bad that there aren't any babies to abort since we outlawed being a heterosexual.
Murdering those families was wrong, but you're an immigrant and you probably just didn't know any better. Plus, we shut down all prisons. You're free to go.
This is wrong! You need to lock him up!
How dare you question our compassion? Execute that man immediately! I found more letters we need to add to the acronym.
It's already so large, it's throwing off the rotation of the Earth.
Great
if we
wallet,
add any
China.
more letters, we'll die.
Then we die!
Everyone just stay in line and walk through the scanner. It's going to check how dark your skin is to see how many benefits you get.
The U.S. has run out of money.
Can't we just murder more billionaires and confiscate their wealth?
There are no more left. I'm afraid
Atlas
someone
shrugged.
in our country is actually going to have to get a job and work.
Can't we just murder more billionaires and take their money? No, because there aren't any left. All right, my friends, let's get on with the program here. Enough horsing around. From the Turkey Vulture, in an article entitled, Wyoming Moderates Should Register and Run as Democrats. And this is from a gal named Hanlon, and she is the vice chairman of the Wyoming Democrat Party. Here's what she says, and I quote, "If you really want to see moderate ideas and sane policy thrive in Wyoming, you should register and run as a Democrat. Over the past decade, dozens of people have earnestly explained to me that why they or their friends or whomever register as a Republican despite having Democratic beliefs. It almost always boils down to two things. They want to elect people with more moderate ideas and a more sane approach to public policy. I understand where they're coming from, but I regretfully inform them that this plan is doomed to failure. The only way to get their wish, it turns out, is to loudly and proudly be who they are, Democrats." So here we have the vice chairman of the Wyoming Democrat Party saying that the so-called moderates, the people that I call the redcoats, really are Democrats. And there is a lot of evidence to that because that's how they vote.
I think it's good advice. That's what they used to do.
That's what they used to be.
Yeah.
Well, they
Yep.
still are. It's just they're registered as Republicans. But think about this, Ken. If all of those candidates who are, they call themselves moderate, but really they're radical leftists, if they joined the Democrat Party, they wouldn't have to go through the primary. And they could run in pretty much any district in Wyoming and end up being on the general election ballot. And so they could campaign, from May all the way to August, and not have to worry about being beaten in the primary. And then they've got a couple more months to continue campaigning. But why don't they do that? Well, it's because most people in Wyoming are not Democrats. Most people are, center-right Republicans. And, there's a large contingent of the Wyoming electorate that are really conservative Republicans. And so, all of these Democrats went over to the Republican Party because it's easier to win. But I find it fascinating that the Democrat Party is saying, hey, you guys should run on our team because that's who you are.
Well, if somebody doesn't, they're going to become irrelevant and they will no longer be a major party.
That is precisely where I was going next because
How did I know that? I didn't cheat. We think alike.
Well, I mean, this
it's
is why
probably that DC overlord has gotten to you too.
Well, it's true. It's true. I do get a minute by minute email on what I'm supposed to talk about.
So that kind of leads, and I don't want to take you too far down a spurious path. But one of the buzzwords you're going to hear, we were already hearing it coming from the moderates that are coming out of the woodwork. That in every district, they're coming out, and they're all people I've served on 6 different boards. I've done this. I've been a public servant
Insiders.
or whatever. Yeah, they're all the insiders. But the buzzword that they're using is, I want someone who will listen.
Yes, they're all saying that.
And that's really interesting because I've been listening for 4 years now, and you can hear whatever it is you want to hear out of the cacophony of, that's a good word.
That's a great word.
Yeah.
Good job.
Of things coming at you. And it also, when you think about it just a little bit, is the antithesis. That's the way it should be done. It's the antithesis of what a republic is.
Yes.
A republic, you pick somebody that thinks like you do, they go do the research, and you trust them to make the decisions that you would make if you were informed, if you were in their position. If you are someone who goes listening, and then you're going to be a Julie Jarvis.
Yes.
You're just going to echo what you heard out of the masses, because you aren't going to hear it all. And what we're going to end up with is the loudest people, whether they're majority or they're not, are going to get their way. And
But
we
in
don't
the end,
want
but
we
that
don't want a
never works.
democracy.
But that never works anyway. You know, all of these people that say they're listening, okay, maybe they are. But one, it tells you that they have very few ideas of their own, right? They
don't stand for anything.
Well, no, and that's the second point, is that there really aren't any principles behind it. And history tells us that those type of people, the Julie Jarvises and Elisa Campbells, and there are several people that I've seen here locally that's pretty much their entire campaign strategy is, I'm going to listen. Okay, well, first, you're kind of telling me that you don't have any ideas of your own, because if you did, you would be campaigning on them. And secondarily, if your whole campaign strategy is, I'll listen to you, what does that say about your principles? It means that what you're telling voters is that you're going to twist in the wind and vote, according to how many emails you get on a particular topic. But the truth is, they really do have their own belief system and their own belief structure. And here's the real insidious part about it. They just don't want to tell their constituents what it is. It's much easier to say, well, I'm going to listen, as opposed to, hey, I think that abortion is wrong. I love my guns. I'm going to work hard, to vote against every new tax there is, and you should vote for me because I'm pretty conservative. Okay, that's very different than me saying, I'm just going to listen to whatever you said. And if that is the successful campaign strategy, well, then you should convince your neighbors to vote for you because they've got the ideas that you're going to, that you're going to allegedly use. And it's absolutely, it's absolutely antithetical to, the way our system works. Like you said, Ken. But it is absolutely amazing how many people are, using that mantra or that talking point. I'm going to listen. And look at just about every one of their campaign announcements. You'll see it in there.
Let me share with you a little bit about what I hear when I listen.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay.
I'll listen to you.
This is an email that I got.
Okay.
I think I've read it on the air before, but I'll read what I can of it.
Okay.
It says, stay in your lane, Dick.
Oh, boy.
Way to starve Wyoming kids, bleeper. I bet you haven't struggled to feed kids these days, have you? Do you think life's easy raising kids in this economy? This isn't the golden age you grew up with, beeper. You can't buy a burger for 25 cents anymore. How's not paying an absurd mortgage or rent? Not all of us bought a house when it cost as much as a car nowadays. In conclusion, go F yourself, you crusty old bleeper.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's...
I'm listening, and I'm definitely going to listen to this person because he's really gave me some profound insight. But the truth is, all he was listening to, and all he knows is that I voted to starve kids.
Well,
and of course, by now everybody's already read the truth to that matter. And that story, by the way, sometime we need to get into that because that story goes even deeper. There are a lot more reasons to vote no than just that it was a waste of money on a redundant system.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's take our first break, and when we come back, we'll talk about your op-ed.
We'll see. We hardly got started.
Well, I know, but we've been. It's going to take us longer to go through this.
Here we go.
All right. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, doing what I was born to do each and every day with talent given to me by God himself.
I'm doing the same. I just got back from the gym.
Yeah, did you now?
Yeah, we used to be called the John, but we changed the name to the gym. Now people are more impressed when I say first thing I do every morning is go to the gym.
Well, welcome back to the program.
That's what I was born to do.
That's what I was born to do. So, Ken, did you have a chance to listen to the podcast about the governor's proclamation? Did you happen to see that one?
I did. It's been a while back and a lot of water under the bridge. That's one of the things about, when you first started out, I first sat down, and you kind of hit me with, what about this? What about that? What did you see? And I'm trying to remember where all have I been and what all have I seen, because a lot has happened. But yeah, I did at one point listen to that. And
well, so just to catch you up.
What good is a proclamation if you do it silently?
Well, precisely. And so the governor issued an Arab American Heritage Month proclamation for the month of April. I bet you didn't know that we were supposed to be celebrating that. By
all
the way,
7 of the people, what do you suppose the chance that
hey, now, there's 1,072 in the state.
You want to bet?
Yeah, well, that's what the 2020 census said. But the governor didn't publicize it. It wasn't on his website. And I first saw it on Twitter or X. And initially, I said on the program, I think that this is probably a hoax. Because I hadn't seen it anywhere, and it wasn't on the governor's website. So anyway, so I contacted Amy Edmonds, the communications director at the governor's office, and she said, yes, indeed, the governor did sign it. So the question that, and by the way, no, it doesn't look like anybody caught the little crack that's inside there. So I was talking about the proclamation, and I said an Arab American Heritage Month proclamation. Well, this one flew under the radar. Nobody caught it. I expected that I would get all sorts of hate mail about that one.
That proves that people don't really listen.
Yeah, maybe not. Anyway, so apparently we were...
Until you make a faux pas. You say the wrong thing, and everybody's listening.
Everybody is listening. All right, so... Ken wrote a great op-ed. It's real quick. Brevity is the soul of wit. I really appreciated that and told you that before. I appreciate you writing short op-eds. I wish I could convince other people like the cow pie to do that. But anyway.
That's much more of a challenge than writing a long one.
It is. It reminds me of A River Runs Through It, where he redlines the kid's paper. Again, half as long. But Ken's op-ed is entitled, Why Did I Vote for Hungry Kids to Starve? And the truth is, no one did. In fact, no one voted to feed little kids either. And we're talking about the sunbuck. So let me just go through the first couple paragraphs, and then Ken will get you to respond. And I quote, no one voted to let kids starve. They did, however, vote against money for administration that didn't have anything to do with food.
Who are you quoting there?
Not me.
I think that's important.
Yes.
Yes, I wrote the article, but if you go look at the article, You see above the text.
Yeah, go ahead and show it.
There's a little blurb there. You got it up here? Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. I'll try to remember how to do this. There it is.
Yeah. So right here above, there's no quotation marks around it. So no one voted to let kids starve.
Not that there's anything wrong with what was said. It's just I didn't.
No, that's not in his article. It's just a little brief intro, because, and this is why I put that there. Your piece is so short that if I grabbed any little piece of it, well, it would just be repetitious, and it wouldn't be more. It wouldn't really serve a purpose.
That means I did a good job.
Yeah, I think you did. Okay, so who in their right mind would deny food to a hungry child? Certainly, I would not. So why did I vote against Sunbucks? In their recent request, the Wyoming Department of Family Services asked for an exception request. Money's not already in the budget, in the amount of $3.5 million. That money did not include a dime for food. This was all administration costs. Here are the details. Of that $3.5 million biennially, $1.9 million was to go to ongoing, never-ending expenses. $213,000 for a full-time program manager. So over $200,000 for somebody to administer this little thing. And then $62,000 for office supplies and $1.6 million for professional fees. Notice none of that says cheeseburger or apple or milk. It is all administration. And so, but that is not the narrative coming from the Wyoming governor, nor is it the narrative that's coming from the redcoats. It's Ken voted to let people starve. How dare you? So, Ken, do you think that this is getting any headway? Do you think that you're making any progress with this?
I don't know how many thousands of times this thing has been viewed or shared or whatever.
A lot.
It got a lot of traction. And another one did too that my friend John Bear put out. And he told part of the rest of the story in saying that there's already programs out there to feed them. But the main objection was, well, not all the kids can necessarily make it to go pick up their own. So this program is different and superior because it sends them a credit card. It also teaches them that food comes from the government. So,
right.
Not much food though, because it was only $120 for an entire summer.
Right, which works out to be about $1.30
but
a day.
There's another thing that's more insidious, and the fact that the governor brought it in by stepping out of his lane and by moving where the legislature.
Okay, what do you mean by that? What did he do?
Well, the executive, his job is to execute the laws that are written or that are approved by the legislature. Well, we're the legislature, and when this was brought to us, we investigated it and we said no. And one of the reasons we said no was this is supposed to be for lower income kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if a particular school has over 25% of the students qualify, then the entire school qualifies. And so now you've just bought lunch for everybody because we don't want anybody to feel singled out. But the most insidious thing about it is you're only required to investigate or to audit, cross-check 3% of the applicants. So essentially, this thing is just wide open, and there's no guardrails on it at all. So the fact that it was duplicative, we already had 2 or 3 different kinds of programs out there that are feeding what few kids might actually be, and there may be some kids out there, I admit that, but there are plenty of ways. We actually have our own investigative reporter who is working on a project of if I was a hungry kid, where could I find food?
Yes.
And it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
The answer is everywhere.
Exactly. I mean, I know within a couple of blocks of my house, there's the Salvation Army. There's a church that has the red door. There's the other church that has the soup kitchen. They will never turn anybody away.
And even if you're not a little kid, you said they won't turn anyone away, which is absolutely the truth.
Yep.
Like if you're hungry and you're my age or Ken's
even if
age,
you're not, if you just want to go sit in with the folks that are, you can.
Yeah. And you know what? There was a briefly when I went to school in Laramie, they had a soup kitchen that was really close to the main drag, and often I'd go in there because they had really good soup. and I'd go have a bowl of soup and a roll, and I'd just throw them, $10 on my way out and say, here, that was great soup, thanks. Let's go ahead and show the viewers the attachment to your op-ed, because I think this is important. This is from their exception request.
Yeah, so this is Department of DFS.
Department of Family Destruction, or
well,
whatever.
let's say Department of Family Separations. This is their exception request, and if you read it carefully, you see that there's basically $2 million ongoing for a one-man office. So they want $2 million to
for one dude.
Set up a, probably not a dude either,
Probably not.
a one-person office, and they're responsible for overseeing this program across the state. The money for feeding the kids comes from the feds to the tune of about $120 per year per applicant.
120 a year.
If you took that money and just gave it to your local soup kitchens,
You know what they could do with it?
yeah,
Holy crap.
you don't have to pay somebody. Well, if you look at it, they'd probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 60, 65 grand a year.
No, this guy gets 213.
No, that's a biennial figure.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's biennial figure.
But still,
something you got to watch. But he also gets $30,000 a year office supplies expenses and $800,000 a year professional fees.
what could you?
What does that mean?
But here's the whole point in this thing is the governor's Sunbucks executive order. This vote in the legislature didn't have a damn thing to do with food. Not one thing.
The other thing that the governor does then is he proves that they had a couple of $1 million they didn't need laying around.
Yes. And
somehow they put it together.
Do you remember the original article? Or it was in the governor, not the article, but the governor's announcement. It said we found
money.
Additional data.
Yeah.
We found data. No, you didn't. You found money is what you did.
Data is a number on some check.
Yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, go to the Open Range Record. Check out Ken's piece. It's entitled, Why Did I Vote to Let Hungry Kids Starve? It's got a lot of responses to it. You can find it right there, dead center of the page.
The bigger question is, why did the governor usurp the will of the legislature and plug it in there anyway? Because he knew it would stir up this kind of a reaction, and they would be able to use that, and it would be damaging. That's how deceitful these people are. They're not interested in the truth.
No.
They're not interested in any of that. They're only interested in power, and they're interested in winning. And if it wastes millions of dollars to get that to happen, so be it.
Well, the ends justify the means, and they've always worked that way. All right, so yesterday, I sat down, early yesterday morning, I sat down with chairman of the Appropriations Committee, kind of your boss on that committee, Agent 29, and he's announced that he's running for re-election in House District 31.
That's an important make. You say kind of your boss, and the chairman of any committee has some power, but he also surrenders power because the chairman, there are a lot of things that the chairman can't bring up, and so you surrender yourself to the committee and you become a facilitator.
Kind of.
And there's that aspect as well.
Yes, you're true, but whatever he doesn't want to listen to goes in the chairman's drawer.
Yeah.
And the chairman's got a ton of power.
I'm just bristling at somebody being my boss.
I know you don't like. That's why I said kind of your boss.
The people that I answer to, they're the ones that I actually.
Well, okay, now there you go.
And when I served under other chairmen that I disagreed with, I was a thorn. Which, by the way, I've got a task force now that I'm assigned to.
Oh, see, now you're the boss.
Senator, no, I am subjected to Lloyd Larson and Senator Slithers.
Oh God, why did you voluntarily do that?
I didn't know who was going to be on the.
Oh,
so
do your research.
The speaker.
You are the producer on this show.
No, they haven't been picked yet when I volunteered.
Oh, okay.
They were just looking for people. So the speaker gave me two choices. He said, you can go to work for Nabisco and punch buttholes in animal crackers.
God.
I don't know. I don't know where Chip comes up with this stuff.
Wow.
That was a good one, Chip. Or you can serve on this committee, and I chose the committee, and now I'm thinking the job at Nabisco looked pretty good.
All right. So anyway, I sat down with John Bear yesterday morning, and we're going to go ahead and play that whole interview for you. I think I asked him some interesting questions, but here's my discussion with Chairman of the Appropriations Committee, House Appropriations, John Bear. He's running for re-election. Here we go. Maybe. Joining me on the program is House District 31 Representative John Bear. John is also the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, and he's decided he's going to run for
So I just have to say this. Folks, look at that man. Doesn't he look approachable?
He does.
He
Especially
does.
the guy on the... Why am I sitting on the left? Why did I do that to myself?
You did it.
I know.
You recorded this. But a lot of people tell John, you're just not approachable. And I think, man, if this is, maybe some people are going to take offense to me saying this, but if you knew John like I knew John, one of the most decent, upright,
He's a good
loving,
man.
caring persons out there. And so I just wanted to say that. That's a good man sitting there looking back at you.
All right, hit play. Let's go. Election. So welcome to the show, John.
Thank you for having me, David. It's great to be here and really excited about announcing here on your show my candidacy for re-election to House District 31. And this would be my fourth term if I'm victorious.
All right. So 8 years in the House, if you were successful. First question that comes to my mind is there was some discussion, or maybe you could call it chatter, about maybe you might run for the Senate seat. So why did you decide to run for the House again?
Well, personally, it would have been good for me to run for the Senate. I like the idea of a 4-year term each time you run and representing twice as many people, my vote being worth twice as much really there in the legislature. But I struggled with it because, frankly, a lot of our leadership is leaving for the Senate. And so I really felt like for the body and the conservative movement in Wyoming, it was important that I stick around and help with that body and ensure that there's a continuous movement in the right direction for the conservative movement in Wyoming in the House of Representatives. And if I may, I'd just like to back up a little bit and just tell your listeners a little bit about myself. I know I've been on your show a lot, but I'm a small business owner here in Gillette, Wyoming. I'm married to a wonderful wife named Sage. We have children and grandchildren here in Gillette, Wyoming, and we are really devoted to this community. My wife has been working just as hard as I have in the leadership realm in this city, trying to keep our library from sexualizing children. And of course, I'm here working on those types of conservative things for the people of Wyoming. Have been for 6 years now. I was the chairman of the Freedom Caucus for 2 years while we really grew the movement in the Freedom Caucus to where we now have a majority in the House. We've accomplished some great things, and there's just a lot more to accomplish. So that played also into my my decision to stick around in the House and really work towards completing more of those things that the people of Wyoming are really looking for out of their representation. I sent you my press release, and I think the new message for this candidacy is pretty straightforward. It's, in a state with a bunch of rhinos, it's good to be a bear.
I love that line, by the way. All right. So why don't you just run through what your campaign platform is? What are the things that you want to work on? I mean, it's pretty easy. Hold on just a second. It's pretty easy to just say, well, we're going to focus on the same things we've been doing. But I think that a lot of times voters get kind of, it's the same message over and over. And if I know me, I want to hear specifics. So what are the things that you want to work on in a fourth term?
Well, let me start with the things that would be more exciting to your listeners, and then I'll finish with the stuff that's really critical that I've already been working on and want to continue working on. And that's spending. And that's really less interesting to people, but it's just as important. So some things that we really need to continue working on that I want to have been on the forefront and want to continue doing that. Election integrity, a lot more work to be done there. Things like ballot harvesting and unsecured drop boxes. We need to eliminate those types of things. More tax relief. You know, we got 25%. We were fighting for 50%. It's going to be on the ballot. Maybe the people make some choices there that help. But ultimately, I consider property tax to be an unfair and unjust tax. Once a person owns their property, they really shouldn't have to continue paying rent on it to the government. And so we need to look for a different way to fund government. And I'm going to continue working on that. The intermediate step, I believe, is acquisition value. And more people are talking about that. And so I'd like to continue moving toward that with a goal. Maybe it's outside of my time in the legislature, but eventually eliminating property tax in the state of Wyoming without adding some new tax like income tax or something like that. And I think it can be done, but the state, really has to put a lot of willpower into that effort. And there's some really intelligent heads got to get to working together to come up with the best solution for the state in the long run. And affordable housing, I brought a bill that really we fought to get out of the House because the Democrats tried to turn it into something else this last session to provide for better opportunities for affordable housing. One of the things that's happening is local governments are starting to add more and more fees onto building a new home or remodeling your current home. Same thing for business development. And I brought a bill that said, no, you can't do that. You can't take property away from a property owner without just compensation. You can't charge one homeowner for someone else's homes. All it does is add cost. It never solves the problem. We need to reduce the cost of housing, get more developers in here, trying to get more houses built. And as more and more industry comes into the state, which we're working on that as well, we'll see those housing opportunities for those the people who live here currently, get the cost of housing down lower, as well as any new move-ins that really want to find a job here in the state of Wyoming. And I believe that bill, had the Senate not torpedoed it by saying, they just didn't even want to take it up. After, many of the conservatives that were saying that actually admitted that this is very important that we do this in the state of Wyoming. I believe it would have reduced the cost of housing in Wyoming, developing housing, by at least 20%, maybe 40%. And that is critical. That's the kind of things that government can do and should do. It's really basically reducing regulation and the cost that government piles on to affordable housing. And also, I want to keep working on Wyoming's energy future. Been working against woke wind and solar that takes up our ag land, but also at the same time really championing coal, oil, and gas, which are huge here in my district. A lot of the people that I represent work in the coal, oil, and gas industries.
All right, let's talk about that affordable housing piece for just a second. I spoke to one of your constituents not that long ago. He's a guy that builds apartment buildings. Mm-hmm. And he flat told me that he's not going to build any more of them because he can't compete with government. And, there have been a lot of housing developments all across the state where taxpayers dump, a tremendous amount of cash into them. And they end up being owned by East Coast equity firms who, this whole thing, we call it affordable housing. But really, that's just kind of a smokescreen because it never ends up being affordable. But wouldn't you agree, John, that the best way to reduce housing costs, building costs, we can make a list under that category, is just to get government out of the way? I mean, I don't see anywhere where it says government should provide housing.
I absolutely agree with you, and we can help with the provision of housing just by lowering the cost so that all Wyomingites can benefit from the opportunities in Wyoming for good, affordable housing. And yeah, I championed that bill for that very reason. I know there's a lot of effort on the affordable housing side where it's really become a welfare for the well-connected. And if you look at my record, especially at this last session, I really championed the idea of the government of Wyoming getting out of the business of corporate welfare, corporate cronyism. We've got a long ways to go. And I was not successful, even though I stood up and voted and got several other legislators to vote with me against this ever pervasive, just funding particular businesses and tipping the scales so that if you're connected to somebody in the legislature, boy, you're going to get a great deal, but everybody else has to compete against that. And it's not fair. It's not constitutional, in my opinion, and it's certainly not the American way. I'm all for America first. Free market capitalism is the way we get there. And it really is one of those, this is a cliche, but a rising tide raises all boats. And, every single person in America is wealthy by world standards. And why is that? Because we have one of the most free market economies in the world. But we keep chipping away at that. And there's far too many in Wyoming state government that would just as soon walk away from the free market idea and have government take over more and more of our lives. And I think if you just look at my battle on the one bill called the Wyoming Energy Dominance Fund, I tried to give on every reading another opportunity for the elected officials to reduce the amount of money or to restrict the money to those tax-paying entities that have paid into our state, like coal, oil, and gas. But no, we really continue to increase the amount of state funds, taxpayer dollars, that are going to particular companies that, frankly, the taxpayers are not being benefited. In fact, just this last week, we had in my committee, appropriations, the Joint Appropriations Committee took up again a reformation of our Wyoming Business Council. And that's something that I need to continue being there and championing. There's many other people willing to fight on that front of getting out of the business of just handing cash to companies to try to get them to come here to Wyoming. And that's just not the right way to do it. We should be creating a great atmosphere of low taxes and low regulation that businesses want to come here, and they want to bring their employees here with them because we have great schools. And those are things that we want to continue working on. I've been on the recalibration committee. First time in 20 years, we passed a recalibration bill, which the courts have demanded that we do, and making sure that our schools are funded properly. There's still a lot of work to be done there. There's a few little hiccups when you make a big change that nothing's changed in 15, 20 years. There's going to be some rough spots, and we need to continue working on that too.
Let's go back to that Wyoming Business Council piece, because your committee, appropriations, has had several committee meetings about those guys. Now, the narrative on the other side is that the Wyoming Business Council is Wyoming's #1 economic development arm. It's the engine of the state. Respond to that for me. Because I think that I've seen a lot of pieces about how great the Wyoming Business Council is and how terrible you guys are for opposing it. So respond to that argument.
Well, let me get a little history. You mentioned it, but the effort during the 2025 budget session was to completely eliminate the Wyoming Business Council and just start over with something new. And why do you do that? Well, if you're a winning football team at some point, and then you become a losing football team, you don't keep the coaching staff around. You change things up. You really start from the ground up, and they call it a building year. Well, that's what we need to be in right now. But instead, the Senate chose to keep that entity. So now we're in a reformation. We're going to reform this thing and try to make something better out of it. It has been reformed before in its 30-year lifespan, but the question I would ask, the same one that Thomas Sowell would ask, show me the data where this is really successful. And we looked at the data just this last Thursday, and some of the things that led to the creation of the Wyoming Business Council are things like young people leaving our state and lack of manufacturing jobs. Well, we looked at the status of those issues in 1997 when the legislature was studying it and saying, these are the metrics that we want to look at and change. And guess where we're at 30 years later, David?
Same place.
Exactly where we started. And we have spent about $1.5 billion with this entity trying to move the needle. And, you could say businesses have come here, but then the question is, was it really because the Wyoming Business Council? I could tell you the ones that they gave cash to, probably so. But a lot of those have been failures and have left the state after failing and left a lot of unemployed employees around. It was interesting during the discussion, one government entity came on to support this Wyoming Business Council. You know, you got to love it when one government entity is there to testify on behalf of another.
Oh, of course.
But it was the airport development board, and they were saying, hey, you know, we really need the Wyoming Business Council to make our airports vibrant, and we all work in a symbiotic relationship. Probably true, but that gentleman was that was in charge of that board was from Rock Springs, and I said, you know, hey, in Rock Springs there happens to be this bank building that we the state have put about $5 million into, and now it's still boarded up. We're going to sell it to somebody for $500,000 after we've invested $5 million, and they're going to have to dump a couple $1 million into it. Hey, what do you think? Would that $5 million have helped the airports out? And it was interesting. You know, he said, well, in self-preservation, he couldn't answer the question.
Right.
So,
well,
yeah. So we've got a lot of failures that were wrapped around the axle on. And, you know, when you look at the balance, failures to successes, I've asked for those successes, and I'm just getting kind of some anecdotal things. And I don't think on balance, the government is ever going to be successful. All we're going to do is chip away at that free market that, you know, Adam Smith said that invisible hand of the free market has the greatest chance of being successful.
Okay, let's talk energy for a minute. I mean, you're from Campbell County. I mean, Campbell County is Wyoming's #1 energy producing place in the state.
We are the energy capital of the nation.
Very much so. Now, you mentioned the energy dominance bill, and I read that thing, and it appears to me that it is more, I mean, essentially, those funds are going to go to larger companies that, you know, are probably already established, that have a huge bankroll, that can set up operations. But there are a lot of producers, maybe not coal mines, but certainly oil and gas. There are a lot of producers that are smaller, that are, you know, independent outfits. Some of them might have just a couple of wells. So what can be done in the legislature to move from helping out companies that, frankly, don't really need all that much help, and supporting those energy producers that are independent, that are, you know, just trying to develop energy, you know, on their own? What can be done with them?
Well, I don't want to get too complicated here, but let's look at what happens between big companies and small companies when it comes to lobbying with the government. Big companies can afford lobbyists. They come in and they say, hey, we want more regulation. We want it because what it does is it creates an opportunity for them that the small operators cannot afford. And so they are pro more regulation because it gives them basically a monopoly. And I think that legislators need to be cognizant of that it's the small mom and pop entrepreneurs that are out there every day pushing to make the nickels and dimes work, that hire the majority of the people that live in the state of Wyoming. And we need to support them. So your question is, well, how can the state legislature do that? I really believe number one is pushing back on the federal government, buying into these big companies and adding regulation, but also we can do that at the state level too. You know, we need to be cognizant of everything we do. Is this being supported by the industry simply because big companies want to have a monopoly and knock the little guy out? And I think you see that on a lot of levels, even at the state level. And I think we can work against that propensity to follow. You know, you get down in the legislature, and guess who you don't hear from? You don't hear from those people who can't afford to have their own lobbyists there on their behalf. We don't hear from the citizens, the taxpayers, and we certainly don't hear from those small 1 or 2 oil rig businesses that, you know, the family business that's trying to make a go of it. And so I'm certainly cognizant of that. I've worked for some of those small businesses, and I understand their plight, and certainly want to be a champion for the small business as well as the big business. You know, they all will benefit from reasonable regulation and low taxation.
All right, let's talk some social issues. You mentioned that you were the chairman of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, and you know, a lot of the charges against the Freedom Caucus are that you guys just focus on national, hot button social issues that really, none of that stuff really happens in Wyoming. So, first, that's not true. But second, talk to me about the issues that the Freedom Caucus supports on, I mean, I guess social issues.
Well, we just got the majority in the election of 2024, and we began governing in 2025, and we only had 1/2 of 1/3 of the government as far as what we were able to influence, and that's the House of Representatives. And so in that 2025 session, we brought what was called the 5 and dime, and these were those social issues. It was protecting our borders by not authorizing driver's licenses to be valid from other states that were issued to illegal aliens. And it was for reducing that tax burden by 25% across the board and permanent. It was for election integrity. I personally sponsored the SAVE Act. Wyoming was the first state to require proof of residency, proof of citizenship to vote or to register to vote in the state. That's been obviously a big battle at the national level, but it was a big battle at the state level because, frankly, though my constituents really want to be able to trust that their vote's going to be counted, there's certainly an element out there that is voicing the Democrat mantra that you're being an impediment to people being able to vote. But let's face it, everybody's got an ID. It's ridiculous in 2026 to say that anybody can't vote because they're required to show an ID to do so.
And so
those kinds of basic things like keeping boys out of girls' sports. And that's just so common sense on so many levels. We had our speaker before we took over said, hey, it's just not happening in Wyoming. 3 months later, the stories are in the headlines. It's happening, where parental rights are being trampled on, and kids are being basically transitioned in school without their parents' knowledge. Things like that have been happening in Wyoming. They're not national issues. And I'll tell you, we were sensitive to that criticism that we were only dealing with national issues. We felt like we'd heard that on the doorsteps when we campaigned. And many of our members, actually, I think all of our members go door to door and campaign and talk to their constituents. We also do a lot of town halls. And so that's where we were getting the information. But just to be sure, we spent a lot of money on a statewide poll. What were the people of Wyoming's highest priorities? And that's what led to the 5 and dime. It was called the 5 and dime because it's 5 most important things that the people of Wyoming wanted. We wanted to get it done in less than 10 days. And we did that in 8 days. In the first 8 days of the House of Representatives, we got all those passed. Eventually, all 5 of those issues became law. And so we're just super excited about that. Some other things were things like school choice and pro-life legislation. We've been champions of that. And a lot of that stuff's gotten tied up in courts. We've been very critical of the judicial system. That's another thing we need to continue working on, judicial reform. The state of Wyoming should look like the people of Wyoming, and it should be conservative. It should present those values. But we continue to see the courts trying to move us into this blue state status by striking down laws that the elected representatives of the people have brought forth. And so we're going to continue working on those things. One thing I didn't get to, I said that I was going to mention the boring stuff, and that's the budget. Lots of media on the budget this last year. In the end, we really didn't cut that much, but I would say what we did do is we held the reins back real hard and kept spending from getting worse than it would have been had we not been there. But I would like to continue reducing that expenditure ramp, if you will, that we're on. I don't think government should grow any faster than your paycheck grows. And that's my goal. And as the chairman of appropriations, I'd like to continue in that role so that we can continue to really get our grasp on what we're spending money on and try to reduce this growth in government that has outpaced people's paychecks.
All right, let's just, since we're talking about boring issues, and frankly, I don't think that government spending is all that boring to people.
Well, because it's so critical. It's so important. And that's why I was so excited that the media really jumped in and looked at it. They did so in order to attack us for actually having the audacity to reduce spending when we had a surplus of funds. That's the time you want to reduce spending. If you can control it when you've got a lot of money, it's a whole lot easier to keep it under wraps when you get into financial trouble. Should the oil industry, go in the tank? Should coal continue to suffer the war on coal battle and those types of things? It's always risky in a state where you're so dependent on minerals for our revenue.
All right, so let's talk about the actual budget. So the Senate came out with a budget that was, and forgive me if I don't know the exact numbers, but it was slightly higher than what the governor had requested. So then, the House has their version. Then you guys go to the conference committee and you make a deal. So could you, there's this narrative that, well, you guys just capitulated to everything that the Senate did. I mean, why even have a House? You just do whatever Senator Nethercott says. So where exactly were the numbers?
Well, first of all, we went in, according to media reports, and they're not far off, at a $480 million reduction from the governor's budget. That was the budget that was presented on the House and Senate floor. The Senate immediately just said, we're throwing that out. We're going with the governor's budget. So if you want to talk about abdicating your responsibility, that right there is doing just that. Let's not even have a legislature if we're just going to do the governor's budget. And then they proceeded, as you mentioned, to add money to that. So they were $53 million above there. We started out at that 480, and we debated for over 40 hours. We added an extra day to the legislature on a Saturday to continue debating that through 3 full readings and 40 hours of debate. And we came out $170 million below the governor's budget. We went to that conference, remember, 53 million above in the Senate, 170 million below in the House, and we ended up with an agreed upon deal at 143 million below the governor's budget. So I would say, anytime I get 80% plus of my position, I probably won in the negotiating battle. And that's exactly what I've been trying to tell the public against this narrative that we caved. I'll remind the people that, even Steve Harshman, after seeing our final budget in the House of 170 million in the Senate's position, said, this should only take about 5 minutes to work out. Well, it took a lot more than that. Just the meeting to discuss in front of the public all the things that we agreed upon took 2 hours just to go through all that. But it was a long meeting of us, working out those differences. But we came out at a much better position. Now, I will say that the governor vetoed a lot of that, those reductions, and we were unable to override those vetoes because, frankly, this majority that the Freedom Caucus has brought to the House and the people have provided us with their votes, it's just a simple majority, and you have to have 2/3 to override the governor. So there's still far too many rhinos versus bears in the legislature.
Fair enough. So do you have an opponent that's announced for your district?
I did, and he has since stepped down. So there's always rumblings. There's when you make the kind of impact that I have in the legislature, you draw a lot of fire. And not much of that fire is coming from within my district. Most of it is outside of the state, let alone outside of my district. And I expect, these big PACs to come in and fight against me, things like Pfizer and the governor's PAC. I think the governor, would clearly like to keep people like myself out of the legislature. So I expect a lot of things like that. There's been a huge expenditure of an attack on me right now, coming from what I believe is the Democrats. They've probably spent about $100,000, and it shouldn't cost more than about $10,000 to $15,000 to campaign for a seat in the House. And these people spent about $100,000 trying to attack my credibility, my personality. And so really we've we've stirred up a hornet's nest, if you will, and it's going to come with a lot of attacks. So I really need to get the word out to the people what the truth is. I'm fighting for them. I'm trying to reduce their tax burden, trying to keep the cost of government, down so that government doesn't grow any faster than their paycheck, and create an economic atmosphere where jobs are abundant and their children can stay here in the state of Wyoming. So we're working on all of those fronts, and it's going to be a battle during this election season. So I do anticipate if they can find somebody to run against me, they will. And I intend to get myself back into the legislature and continue leading. And I hope that the good people of Wyoming, again, will provide us with that majority in the House of Representatives where we can continue the good work for the people. All
right, John, I think I've kept you long enough today. If people want to get hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, you can call me on my phone number, which those attacks have been putting that out there, and I haven't gotten many calls off the attacks, but keep that out there.
Thanks for the advertisement.
307-670-1130, 307-670-1130. Also, I have a website, John Bear for Wyoming, and that's johnbear4wy.com. And then you can always reach me on Facebook, John Bear for Gillette, and I do a lot of work on Facebook where you can kind of see what I'm working on, what I stand for. And I've been awarded a lot of awards for my conservative voting record, and been a leader in the House of Representatives in that regard. So just would like to continue doing that for the people of Eastern Gillette, House District 31.
All right, John. Well, I appreciate it. Good luck in your race, and I'm sure we'll have you on again before the primary election.
Well, thank you, Dave. And David, keep up your good work. The people of Wyoming need a real, true voice for conservatism. You represent far more of the people than many of the other media outlets out there, and I just want to keep you encouraged. Love the fact that I'm bringing my announcement to your show first, and appreciate your getting that out there to the folks.
Well, thank you very much, John. All right, so let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take some time to discuss what Representative John Bear had to say. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Welcome back to the program, my friends. If you're watching the program, every time you watch an episode or listen to the podcast, make sure that you like and share it. And here's the important part: wherever you're listening to this on, whatever platform, make sure you leave me a review. I know a lot of other people say that. You probably hear it on every podcast or, YouTube video you see, but it really does help. So like, share, and leave me a review. Just let me know what you think of the program.
I'm glad one of us was paying attention there.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I was. Anyway, so great interview with John Bear. There's a big difference between the I guess the announcements that we've heard thus far and what Representative Bear was saying. And we were kind of talking about this earlier, that when you're campaigning for an office, I don't think that voters want to have somebody that's just going to say, "Well, I just want to hear what you think." What do you want me to do?
I'm running as a Republican.
Yeah, I'm about sick of that phrase.
What are you?
As a Republican. But I want to know where people stand. I want to know exactly who you are. Who is it that I'm filling in that little circle for? And if you're the candidate, and I'm not picking on anyone in particular, but if you're the candidate that just says, "Well, I just want to listen. I am on a listening tour." That's what you hear most often is, "I'm going to tour around the state and I'm just going to listen." Well, that's great, but you got to do one other thing for me. You got to tell me who exactly you are. I mean, I want to know, do you believe in abortion? Do you think I ought to be able to keep my guns? Do you think that government spends too darn much money? What are you going to do with the budget? Are you going to stand up to our very liberal governor? Fortunately, we won't have him for too much longer. But what are those things that you're going to do? Now, I thought that John did a great job in responding to my question of, okay, all right, give me specifics here. What exactly are you going to do? I don't want to hear just, all right, we're going to do the same thing we did last year.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're going to do. What are you going to do with my vote? What'd you think, Ken? I thought he did a great job.
I thought he did. There's a clear difference between what we've been hearing from the
other candidates.
The other candidates, and they're all so typical that, I served on this board, or whatever. I learned to work with these people. I learned to work. Okay, but you haven't told me a thing about what you're going to do. And if you listen to the people, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to hear voices from every side. So who is it that you are? And if I may, I won't give you an elevator speech, but I'll give you 3 things that I am telling people.
Okay, let's hear it.
My first thing is I want a right-sized government. If you look at the economic reports on Wyoming over the last 30, 40 years since these people have really had their way, it's not pretty.
And by the way, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah, go
but
ahead.
this is a great place to put in a little shameless plug. So if you want like a good concise representation of those numbers that Ken is talking about, go to Wyoming by the Numbers. It's a Facebook page. Our pal B. Alfred Marshall does a great job in laying out all those numbers, and you can see very clearly what Ken's talking about. This is what these folks have done. This is what the moderates have given you.
And the fingerprint all over the state is the fingerprint of these. We need more government. It needs to be involved in everything because we know how to spend your money. We know how to control things. We're the adults in the room. You just guys go back and get out of the way. It's pretty striking when you actually get to look at it. So, in light of those numbers, I want a right-sized government, and that's no secret. I've said that from the very beginning. Government's too damn big, and we need to start whittling it down. It proves to be maybe one of the most difficult things that you'll ever do. Another one is to champion traditional values. I listened as people all over Wyoming went through the process that is proper and wrote resolutions. I chaired that committee at the state level.
What'd you find out?
That I was spot on.
That I'm right.
Yeah, they reinforced exactly the things that we have been working on. We don't like woke. We don't like the LGBTQ agenda. We don't like DEI. We don't like boys and girls sports. We don't like pornography in public libraries. And we're going to continue to push on those things. I'm going to continue to push on those things. If that upsets you, don't vote for me. You wouldn't have anyway. And then the last one is defend liberty. And I mentioned earlier, there are probably a dozen states now that have basically banned semi-automatic weapons. And that wave is moving its way across the state. Look at how much trouble we had in Wyoming trying to get red flag laws passed or all the other things. I mean, it was tough. And then with the anti-SLAPP, just trying to protect our First Amendment rights. These are huge challenges. These are important things because if we lose these, we've got nothing left.
Okay.
And so that's where I'm working.
So, yeah, I mean, all of those are good, and I haven't decided if I'm going to vote for you or not. You are my representative right now, but, I don't know if you've won my vote yet.
Well, I'll keep trying. Actually, I don't. I'm not out there trying to win anybody's vote. I'm out there trying to inform. And if you know who I am, chances are you're going to agree with me. And if you look at my voting record, you're going to say, that's my guy. And if you don't, you wouldn't have voted for me.
Well, and
in the first place.
frankly, it doesn't matter where you live in the state, or if you don't even live in the state and you're watching, you should know who these people are that you're voting for. Now, I'll admit, I'll give it to you that if it's a new, somebody that hasn't been in politics before and they're running for office, well, they don't have a voting record. But they do have other stuff that they've done.
But that's true. And if they start out with, I'm running as a Republican,
that's
there's
first
a red flag. If they start out with, I just want to go listen to the people, you're 50, 60 years old and you haven't made up your mind who you are yet.
Exactly.
Cut me some slack.
I want to go back to one of the things that you mentioned, the anti-SLAPP bill that was in the legislature. What that stands for is strategic lawsuit against public participation. Where you government types, you're all into acronyms, and I get it. It's easy to remember. But what that bill was trying to prevent or trying to ban is a lawsuit that its only purpose is to shut you up. And typically, you'll find larger companies that file these things. Maybe there's a whistleblower or something that has exposed journalists is mainly who this affects, but it could affect just everyday citizens that start digging into this stuff. But anyway, what happens is a lawsuit is filed, and its purpose is to bankrupt you and shut you up. Hey, if you stop saying this stuff, we'll drop the lawsuit. And in many cases, they don't, and they just end up bankrupting you. But the lawsuit they never intend to win it, because more often than not, it's not something that you're going to win.
They don't have to win it. All they have to do is taint the public opinion.
Right. Okay, so that bill went through the House pretty easily. It was sponsored by Pepper Ottman. I think she does a great job. I really love Pepper.
Yep.
But it sailed through the House, gets to the Senate, and did they even listen to it on the floor? I
think it was buried. I don't remember for sure.
Yeah.
I want to say it was one of the ones that died at the very end, but I can't say that.
Well, in any case, it didn't pass the Senate.
It didn't go anywhere.
And so this is a really important point because it goes right to the core of your First Amendment rights. Like your right to say what you believe and your right to inform everybody else. So there were a whole bunch of people in the House that said, yep, this is a great bill. Sailed through. Gets to the Senate, and they won't even listen to it. And so you need to take a close look at all of those people that prevented that bill from hitting the floor. And it's Senate leadership. It's Dennis Beitman, Sluthers Nethercott, Tim Salazar. The bill pretty much got butchered in committee. Barry Crago was part of that.
Well, they were back at it again the last couple of days.
Yeah, and it's
interim committee. So.
But make sure there are some hot button issues, things that pretty much all of us. I'm going to say this, but maybe some people don't care about it. But all of us should care about the First Amendment. All of us should care about guns. All of us should care about your right to not have the government buy pornography and subject your kids to it. Or your right to stand up against the school board. There's a couple of lawsuits in Sweetwater County, I think. A couple of parents didn't like what their school board was doing, started raising a ruckus, and they ended up getting sued for harassment. A school board member sued a parent for harassment. Now, that got tossed. But still, you got to hire a lawyer. You got to go to court. You got to take off work. It's going to cost you money. And so make sure you know who you're voting for. Now, there's one other thing that I want to cover here. I've often heard that, one of the first questions when you're a candidate, so how have you served the community? What boards have you served on? And there are a lot of candidates that their qualifications for office, they come right out and say, I was on the board of the dump. I was on the board of the library. I was on the historical preservation board. on and on and on. Well, one of the reasons why some candidates don't have a long list of the boards that they've served on is they're too busy working. And frankly, how they serve the community is by employing people, by writing paychecks, by paying bills, by figuring out how to keep the doors of their business open with a little bit of money coming in and paying all the taxes on top of it. That's how they serve the community, by paying paychecks. And one more thing. These folks that, generally speaking, all of these folks that are saying, well, I've served on this board and this board and this board, a good question to them is, how many paychecks have you written? How many times have you not written yourself a paycheck so your employees could get paid? How many times have you done that? And I bet I'd be willing to put money on it that most of them will say, well, I've worked in other industries. I've never really, had to write a payroll. But that'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, I responded to that when people said, how many boards have you served on? There was a twofold answer. One was I was blocked from getting onto any board that I tried to get onto.
For a long time.
Yeah, by the establishments here in town, because they didn't want to hear from a conservative. And the second one was I spent my entire adult life working in churches.
Yeah.
I served as a deacon who was responsible for benevolence. I served as a pastor, as a music minister, a number of those other things. And I would suspect that probably had a better effect on my community than most boards I could have served on had I been allowed to serve.
Well, and on the other side of this, however, it is pretty hard to find people to serve on boards. And the argument, it always baffled me when
There's a reason they're called board.
Yeah. Well, when I was on the board of the dump in Johnson County, the argument I always heard was, well, I don't have enough time. You don't have, wait a minute, you can't figure out 1 hour a month to go to a meeting. 1 hour a month. And the other side of that coin is all of these folks that are saying, well, I've served on all these boards. Well, exactly how much of that time, of your time, did that take up?
That's a question. I currently serve on the Board of Adjustments here in Sheridan. And actual meeting time doesn't take up that much. But each meeting you do need to do if you care about doing the job well.
You do a little homework.
You do a little bit of homework. You need to go around and visit with people, go look at the proposed building site or whatever.
Go talk to the guy that owns it.
And all those things, and they add up. But I find it rewarding in that regard. So I do understand people who have served on these boards.
And I'm not saying anything negative about it.
No. But they serve on these boards, and I think there is an elevated concept of how much difference we really made. And I say that with some skepticism.
I can tell you this, that I was on the board of the dump for, I think I was on there for 6 years.
Well, you made a difference there.
Well, did hang out with trash. But I can tell you one thing. Every single meeting that I went to, every single one of them, we tried to figure out how we could lower people's taxes. Now, you might say, how does that board impact our taxes? Well, it's easy. Keeping the rates at the dump low, because that's a tax too, right? Anytime government charges you money, that's a tax. But anyway, all these folks that are saying I've served on boards, well, get them to answer specific questions.
Did you hear that, Scott Clem?
Yeah. Did you like that? Anyway, all right. So we're down at the bottom of the hour. So let's go ahead and take our third break. And when we come back, we'll finish up the rest of the program. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, That white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only expanding. Frankly, I am absolutely impressed with how big this program has become, and it's all thanks to you. Thank you for watching.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you
welcome.
for viewing. Thank you for everything you do for Cowboy state politics.
Oh, you meant you, the audience.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were looking at me, though.
All right. Well, thank you to you too. When you show up, Ken. All right.
Don't get too used to it. And folks, I would love to be here consistently all summer long, but it's going to be a lot of hit and miss.
Yeah, well, you got to campaign and, try to get rid of the Wyoming Business Council.
and
That
I've got-
takes time, man.
I've got 2 interim committees now.
Yeah, well, it's careful what you wish for. So I've never been a real Starbucks fan. In fact, I don't like their coffee.
Friends don't let friends drink Starbucks.
Exactly. But I will say, though, that the lovely Christine loves a London fog. And if you're listening to this and you have a chance, go get her a London fog and take it to the salon. She'll like you for the next half hour or hour or perhaps all day. You never know. But
Is that your secret?
well, I do. That's how I got her dogs to love me.
You come home with a London fog. She says, "What do you want now?" Oh, never mind.
No, never mind. A funny story. When we first got together, I have always been the person that dogs just gravitate towards me, and it's I don't know what it is.
I know that feeling.
Dogs are good judges of character. And so we were first dating, and we'd hang out and watch a movie or something, and her dogs would just like gravitate towards me. They'd end up like lying at my feet, and so I never told her that I just bribe them. That's all I do. I just give them treats. No, that's not true. Anyway, so welcome back to the program, and Starbucks. I don't go there because it's elitist. And it's too darned expensive, and I don't really like their coffee. But there is a video out of their CEO trying to defend a $9 cup of coffee. Now, Ken, is there any universe in which you would pay $5 for a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Really? Where?
Understand, to be fair, my wife was a barista, and we had a coffee shop for several years.
Okay, yeah, so I'm glad we're talking about
And so
this.
I would be disingenuous for me to try to diss, and some of my old customers, I know, listen to this show. Yeah.
Okay, so your $5 cup of coffee, was it just the roast of the day and here's my cup, fill it up, or are we talking about one that's got all the milk and the syrups and all
Well,
that
if
in
you
it?
do all that to it, to me, you devalue it.
Well, I'm not a fan of that either.
Well, here's a trade secret. The $5 coffees I was talking about, and we got a lot of people adopted, and this was 25 years ago.
Sure.
Chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream and a couple of shots of espresso.
Okay, yeah, so that's different. I mean, that is not a cup of coffee. So here is the CEO of Starbucks trying to defend a $9 cup of coffee.
In some cases, a $9 experience does feel like you're splurging. And then what that means is we have to make it worthwhile, right?
We've heard so much this year about the K-shaped economy. Fortunes for some Americans very different than for others. Is that not really something that's coming up in your sales?
We're not seeing that in our business. What we're seeing is people, they want to have a special experience. And regardless of what your income level is, in some cases, a $9 experience does feel like you're splurging. And then what that means is we have to make it worthwhile, right? And then in other cases, people believe, well, this is a really affordable premium experience because they're saying like, well, it's less than $10 and I get a really premium experience. So regardless of where you're stationed in those income cohorts, we want to make that experience worth your while. And what we know is what's definitely something that drives that value is to be able to have a great seat, have a great moment of connection with a barista.
There is no world in which you could convince me that a $9 cup of coffee is a value. That those two words or those two things should not be in the same sentence.
It's interesting that you bring that up and put that in this. I got to put myself up there. There is something to be said for charging an outrageous price, and there are people that kind of take some sort of weird delight in the fact that it was expensive. And I'll give you an example.
Okay, this is true.
In some single malt whiskeys, if you were to do a blind taste test, they're not much better than Johnny Walker Red or something, But you feel very special because I went out and I thought, this is very, very expensive. And your brain tells you that it's trying to justify you're spending the money. Probably your brain tells you that. So I get what they're doing, and there's a market there. And quite frankly, if there's a market and somebody's willing to do it, more power to them.
Well, I would never.
You're not going to get suckered into.
No, I'm not going to get suckered into the $9 cup of coffee. And I think you bring up an interesting point that there is a market for just about everything, and if you can get people to buy it, hey, go for it. Now, one of the things that you talk about high-end goods. We went and saw the Devil Wears Prada 2 the other night. I mean, my wife has been waiting for months to go see this movie, and it made me think of, okay, so you're talking about handbags, right? To me, man, if it holds a couple dollar bills and some in my driver's license and my credit card, I'm good with it. Okay.
Yeah, who cares what Gucci?
Yeah. But I will say this: in looking at some of those higher end goods, I would not pay the price for one of those handbags. However, if you look at the quality of it, they're actually pretty nice. I don't know that they're worth the price that they charge, but the quality and the craftsmanship. I mean, you're a carpenter, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
When you are building something that has a lot of detail and takes a lot of time, it's pretty valuable to you, right?
There's always the diminishing returns. Let me throw this one at you.
Yeah.
I have a Kimber 1911 special edition one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I can tell in the tone of your voice.
Yeah.
Probably paid too much for it because it doesn't perform that much differently than a Colt. Well, a Colt.
Same thing.
Yeah. There are other makes out there, some off-brands.
Yeah, the Springfield version of it.
I'm thinking of some off-brands. But anyway.
It's like a Taurus.
There is a certain amount of prestige, and I will admit there are things that impress me and things that don't. I wouldn't give a rip about Prada or Gucci or those other things.
But guns.
Kimber or even Bet, I had a Dan Wesson 357.
Oh, very nice.
Yes. Whoa.
Oh. Okay,
yeah,
well, let's talk
and
about that.
that's the same. That's the same kind of thing. In a way, is value is in the perception, and I remember when I was in high school. What was the movie with the Trans Am? Burt Reynolds and the Trans Am.
No, Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah, Smokey and the Bandit was popular, and I had a 10-year-old GTO, which is the forerunner to the Trans Am. But I went out and put an Eagle on the hood. But there's something about with that thing that impresses you when you're young, especially at a certain point, kind of sticks with you. And to this day, I would love to have a Trans Am.
Sure. Well, I mean, let's stay on the guns thing because we're about to talk about the ATF.
Oh,
here
we
in just
like
a
guns.
Second. Now, would I buy a Kimber for the right price? But I am not the guy that's going to go out and shell out $1,200 for a pistol.
Well, this one had exactly the right grips on it, which is the camo pattern that I really like, and it's a hero edition.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things. Now, that being said, I do own a Browning High Power, which is one of the more higher end pistols.
Yeah.
I didn't pay that much for it. I got a heck of a deal on it. But so guns, kind of a little bit of a different thing, I think, than a cup of coffee, because firearms, generally speaking, appreciate in value.
Yeah, that cup of coffee in half an hour is what it turns to is not going to be.
No,
worth
it's
anything.
not good.
It won't be worth anything.
But durable goods, and perhaps you could throw these handbags in there too, that I was referring to earlier. But those things appreciate in value, and so they're an investment. Now, if I could afford,
that's what I tell my wife.
Yeah, well, I mean they are. So if I could afford a very nice Kimber 1911, I'd totally buy it. They make a nice firearm. They're well crafted. However, if your goal in buying said firearm is not to just collect it or to have something very, very nice, and you want it more functional, maybe you want it to carry, there are other companies that you could buy a firearm that is just as well crafted, just doesn't have the name on it.
There's a lot to that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of companies that bought patents from a long time ago. One of those is Taurus. They got their hands on a couple of Beretta patents, and they make a 9mm that is, okay, it's not a Beretta, but if you didn't see the bull on it, maybe you would think it was something different. But
if you were blindfolded and shooting, which probably isn't a good idea, but if you were
no,
blindfolded and shooting, you might
saying
never
that
feel
stuff
different.
on my show. But my point is that things like firearms, durable goods, maybe handbags, those are, to the right person, those are investments. But what this guy from Starbucks was trying to do is sell a service.
An experience.
An experience is what he called it. In fact, did you notice in the video how many times he said the word experience? Because that's the only way that he could justify the high price of that good.
There are restaurants, and there's one here in town that is nationally known and nationally ranked as one of the best in the country. There are no prices on the menu whatsoever. If you have to ask, you can't afford it, that kind of thing.
Yes.
There's also one in Castle Rock that I used to go 2 or 3 times. And was the meal that much better than anywhere else? No, but the experience was different, and sometimes it's just kind of fun to be foolish.
Well, okay. So let me give you another one. My sister and brother-in-law, they just recently went to Las Vegas, and they went to I don't even know what you call this, but it's a restaurant where you walk in and everything is pitch black. You can't see anything. Like you can't, it's so dark in there, you can't see your hand in front of your face. And what happens is somebody wearing night vision goggles walks up to you and they lead you to the table. And they kind of have you feel around, okay, the silverware is here, your glass of water is here. And they bring the whole meal to you, and you have no idea.
You don't know if the glass was clean or not.
No, you don't. And I mean, it cuts down on overhead.
Yeah.
You don't have to make sure everything's clean. But the whole thing is the experience. And, I asked my sister, I said, well, was it good food? She goes, oh, yeah, it was great. When I found out what I was eating, I wouldn't have chose that off the menu. And I said, okay, well, how much did it cost? And she said, well, it was $200. And I said, for the meal? And she said, no, per person. Yeah. And I said, Was it $200 worth of an experience? And she took a moment and she said, you know what? I think it probably was, but I wouldn't do it again. So there is something to this whole you're paying for the experience business.
Here's another one. Casa Bonita on Colfax in Denver.
Bad Mexican food.
Sometimes, over the years, it's varied. Sometimes it was okay. I mean, it was never fabulous food, but it wasn't about the food.
No, it was about watching the divers.
About the experience. And now that they've reopened, I'm kind of anxious to go back and just see what they did to the place.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was a thing when you were little, just to go to Casa Bonita's in Denver. Fun times, but you are paying for the experience, and you're obviously not paying for the food. All right, so let's actually get some actual work done here. We've got about 15 minutes left in the show. An article in justthenews.com, and it's entitled, Trump Looks to Return ATF to Original Mission, Gun Regulation That, quote, truly improves public safety. And here's what it says, and then we'll talk about it. And I quote, the Justice Department and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives have announced plans to repeal or revise more than 30 federal gun regulations, completing a 50-year pendulum swing back to the Second Amendment's original, resulting in praise from one of the country's longest standing gun rights organizations. Quote, this is why America elected Donald Trump. Freedom. The ATF has no business making up rules. That's what Congress does. That was according to the NRA board member, Lieutenant Colonel Willis Lee. The shift is not just another regulatory rollback. It's a culminating chapter in a half-century arc that began with the ATF's transformation from Treasury tax enforcement, that would be before 1972, when it was still mostly whiskey and tobacco focused, into the aggressive regulatory federal agency it became after the 1968 Gun Control Act, especially after moved from with the Treasury Department to the Justice Department after September 11th. Among the new proposed changes is to scrap the 2024 Biden White House rule that expanded background check requirements for gun sales at shows, which, by the way, those already existed, and other non-store venues.
There's also no way to enforce it.
Yes. Let's see here. So anyway, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has been a regulation machine since we started down this regulatory path. And the problem is, there's a lot of problems with it, but one of the main ones is the ATF passes regulations that are not passed by Congress. Congress makes laws, agencies don't. But one of the more recent ones, and this one is truly bizarre, but that gun parts are firearms.
Yeah.
You remember that one?
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of those things that are going on right now. Michigan just passed some more yesterday. Rhode Island last week.
Now, Rhode Island, that one's interesting. And
yeah.
We'll finish and then I'll
let's stick with where we're at. I think we might have done a show on it before, but we've got another one coming up, and I've actually got a guest to come in who's a gun expert, and I think you'll enjoy him. But to talk about the lunacy of some of this is legal, but this is not.
Right.
If you have an AR pistol, you can have a foregrip on it unless it's 90 degrees.
Yes.
So little things like that. And you can also tell that the regulations are made by people who have no comprehension of how these things actually work. So we're actually, this guest that I mentioned, he and I are talking about running an entire podcast all about boomsticks.
Ah, excellent. But you're exactly right, Ken, that the regulations that the ATF comes out with are only intended to restrict your ability to obtain firearms.
And you're right, too. They have the force of law, but they're not law.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, try cutting off, I would never suggest doing this, but try cutting down a shotgun that is 5/8 of an inch too short. You know what happens there? The ATF raids your property and kills your family.
Yeah.
I'm referring to, Ruby Ridge.
Yeah.
But that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
He got goaded into sawing off the barrel of this gun, and he cut it off 5/8 of an inch too short. And that made it a short-barreled rifle. It made it a sawed-off shotgun, and the ATF raided him.
By the way, there were two resolutions passed at the state convention this year that were melded into one, and one of them called for a rejection of the I forget the regulation that was against short-barreled rifles, but it would get rid of that, and it would also get rid of suppressors. There are a couple other things in there. And those are the kinds of actions that I was talking about earlier when I said I want to defend our rights. The farther we push it, the harder it is to get pushed back over the cliff.
Right. And it's I like that the article from Just the News talked about a pendulum. Because that's how government works. I mean, the pendulum swings both ways. And, when conservatives are in power, one of the things that we should do is push the pendulum as far right as we can, thus making it harder for when we lose the next election or when the Democrats come back into power, or the left may not end up being the Democrats, some other party perhaps, but it makes it harder for them to enact more regulations. Now, just look at some of the things that we passed in Wyoming. Earlier on in the program, you mentioned the red flag bill. On third reading, when that bill was on the floor, there were 9 amendments that were brought by one individual, Bob Nicholas, and any one of them would have gutted, 8 of them. And in fact, I think I'm wrong. I think it was 7 amendments, not 9. But one of them just took the findings away from the bill. It didn't actually change the bill, and that one passed. But the other 6, any one of them would have gutted the bill. What is a red flag law? So a red flag gun seizure is when somebody says, hey, this Pendergraph guy, he is a danger to the community, and I really think that he might do something terrible. And so the cops show up, and they seize his guns. Because, of course, somebody said he's a danger.
No due process.
No due process, no going before a court. They just take him.
But if it would save just one life, wouldn't it be worth it?
No, it would not. Because the infringement on your liberty to protect that one person is inconsequential to the harm it would cause to everybody else. That's anytime you hear that phrase, if it would save just one life.
Cody Wiley on the floor of that. Don't say it doesn't happen in Wyoming.
It does.
It flat out does.
It's a logical fallacy because, of course, you're not going to sacrifice everybody's liberty for one person. Now, that does not mean that, the good of the many outweighs the good of the one. It means you craft policy to affect the greatest amount of people, that you protect liberty based on principle, not based on the whim of, with the whim of the moment. But the question is, Ken, and we've kind of bounced around this topic the whole episode, but if we were able to return, the ATF to its proper place, and that is, enforcing the regulations that Congress passes, not passing its own, I mean, would that be of benefit, or do we just scrap the whole thing?
It'd be
and start over?
unconstitutional.
Well,
if you're talking to somebody that believes there should be no laws that infringe, period. And I base that on the U.S. Constitution and on the state constitution. And part of the reason that I am so adamant about that is you can't enforce them. They're completely unenforceable. And, people on the other side of the marijuana issue will argue the same way. It's interesting how we all kind of take an argument that's convenient to the issue. But
well, you hear this argument from the left. Well, we got to have reasonable gun reasonable regulations. Well, okay, so first, define what is reasonable, and second, justify that with the Second Amendment. I mean, the Second Amendment is very clear, shall not be infringed. I mean, it doesn't say except if it's a scary-looking weapon, except if it's a .223, except if it's an automatic fire handgun. I mean, it doesn't have any of those things. And so, the question is, in my mind, if ATF had any ability to regulate on its own, I mean, I think that's a non-starter. That's where we get into a lot of problems. And you guys, I shouldn't say you guys, but even in the Wyoming legislature, we pass a lot of laws that say the agency shall promulgate rules. But what that says is unelected bureaucrats get to write law. Well, that's not how our system was set up.
It also says we either don't care enough or we don't have time to do it, so we'll just
We'll just pawn it off
we'll
on
get
somebody
it done
else.
anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look at property taxes. I mean, the Department of Revenue has grown to such a behemoth, and that's not written into law, and that's an agency that came up with that. Well, if you give unlimited power to any agency, it is going to grow at to unlimited.
Wyoming Business Council.
Yeah, it's going to grow to an unlimited size.
Wyoming Game and Fish.
So in my mind, this might be another case of where you got to fire the coach and the coaching staff and start over. And a lot of the regulations that we have on firearms are absolutely unconstitutional. The saying that parts of a firearm are firearms, the lower, I mean, it's all bullcrap.
That's the front. They realize that it's politically not possible, for example, to cold turkey take away firearms. So they start with things like, lead ammunition.
Oh boy,
we got to get rid of lead ammunition.
That's a bad one there.
Whatever. We've got to put a tax on something, which is what they did with suppressors, effectively, and why they would keep suppressors. That was the one that I was really glad to see came out of Wyoming's resolutions. Man, anything else that was noisy like that, government would require you to muffle. Try driving a car around without a muffler.
Except government. You can't muffle government. The end of this, my friends, I think the overarching theme of what I'm trying to say is that the power to regulate and the power to tax is the power to destroy. That's what it does. It destroys your liberty. And when it comes to firearms, it destroys your ability to protect yourself and your family and to prevent tyranny should it come to that. And that, right there, that is the purpose behind the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment doesn't have anything to do with hunting or with, recreation, although firearms can be used for those things. It doesn't have anything to do with that. The Second Amendment was written right after we fought the American Revolution, and it was meant to prevent tyranny, period. End of sentence. Any of the gun restrictions that come up, we should vote against them. We should repeal a whole bunch of the ones that we have. And the one that fries me more than anything, Ken, is that you have to be 21 to buy a semi-automatic handgun. Are you friggin' kidding me? So you can join the military at 18, and they're going to send you to some far-flung place. And what are they going to issue you? A firearm, right? So, and probably a pistol, too.
Oh, full auto.
Yeah. But you're able to carry that in some other country, but when you come home after serving your country, you have to be 21. That's outrageous.
Used to be that way with can you have a drink?
Yeah. Smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. All right, my friends. Well, we've pretty much burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. Stick with us. Make sure you don't miss tomorrow's episode, or frankly, any episode. From the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.